stress is going on. Pressing on, I'm pressing on.
Hello once again my fellow YouTubers, I'm back with a review for Dragon Ball Raging Blast on the Xbox 360. Before I begin, I'd like to talk about the limited edition copy of the game, which I picked up on the day of its release, for those of you who don't know about this particular version and are curious as to what it contains. Removing the plastic slit reveals a rather nice looking steelbook case that somewhat mirrors the game's traditional packaging, with Super Saiyan Goku on the front and Super Saiyan 3 Broly on the back. Inside the case, we have not only the game itself, but also a separate CD containing almost the entire in-game soundtrack, with the exceptions of Hironobu Kageyama's new vocal theme, Progression, and its instrumental counterpart. Personally, I think this soundtrack is rather pointless, and would have much preferred something like a making-of featurette, but that's just me. Packaged behind the game case is a 52-page art book, and I have to say that I actually think it's pretty cool to see some of the work that goes into composing the character models and stages and whatnot, plus the 12th page of the book has a nifty 2-page spread showing off all the characters. Last but not least is a downloadable content flyer which makes Super Saiyan 3 Broly immediately playable and also unlocks specialized versions of other characters for use in the multiplayer modes. Right, now that that's done, on to the review. Raging Blast marks developer Spike's move to the current generation of consoles, and much like Burst Limit was the next-gen Budokai game, Raging Blast pretty much serves as Budokai Tenkaichi 4. It even says Next Level Tenkaichi on the back of the box, thus certifying the rumours I'd spoken of back in my review for Tenkaichi 3. Now, everyone who's watched my reviews for Tenkaichi 1 and 3 will know that I really didn't like the idea of the main modes taking me through the various fights in the series without giving me much of anything else to do. Raging Blast is very much the same in that respect, taking you through the storyline of Dragon Ball Z as well as some what-if scenarios, but what helps the Dragon Collection mode stand out is that it actually gives you a surprising amount of upfront variety. Want to completely ignore Raditz and go straight for the Cell games? You can do it! Want to wipe the floor with Majin Buu before going back and knocking Vegeta off his high horse? You can do it! Want to prove who's the superior fusion warrior between Gogeta and Vegito, or see Bardock going toe-to-toe with his grandsons? You can do it! All while adding some extra points to your battle-induced score by triggering the new perfect action prompts that pop up on the screen, similar to the cutscene triggers in Tenkaichi 3. Of course, many of the battles need to be unlocked, but to have so many choices right off the bat is a nice and welcome change. Other modes of play include the Super Battle Trial, which is home to an abundance of options including an arcade mode as well as Team Battle and Power Battle, the latter of which carries limits that can restrict the use of characters created in the Ultimate Customize mode, plus a self-explanatory Dragon Ball Battle and a Punching Machine mode. The World Tournament mode is back as always, as is the Versus mode, once again allowing for online fights over Xbox Live and showcasing a grand total of 34 characters, excluding fusions and transformations. Interestingly enough, the Fused Warriors and some transform states, such as the all-new Super Saiyan 3 Broly and Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, are treated as separate characters with their own places inside the roster. The brand new Super Saiyan 3 characters are particularly interesting cases, since characters like Goku and Gotenks are able to power up into that form during battle. The controls on offer here are for the most part the same as those found in the first 3 Tenkaichi games for PS2. The X button performs melee attacks and the Y button launches key energy blasts, while the A button can be used to perform a normal dash when pressed once and a super dash when pressed twice, and the B button lets each character pull off a signature skill. Meanwhile, the left bumper and left trigger respectively allow you to ascend or descend, while the right bumper lets you block incoming attacks and even deflect super blast attacks when pressed simultaneously alongside the left analog stick, in a cool throwback to the 16-bit DBZ games. Finally, pressing the right trigger will switch between characters in a team battle or activate a transformation when pressed alongside any of the 4 face buttons. In addition, performing special attacks has been simplified even more than it already was, for now you can pull them off simply by nudging the right analog stick, which can also trigger ultimate finishing moves when pressed. Since I'm on the subject of controls, I'll mark these as my first quibble with Raging Blast. To power up and increase your ki, players will have to physically remove their thumbs from the left analog stick and thus stop dead and press down on the D-pad. Furthermore, performing special attacks can be problematic since players will have to break from the face buttons and move their thumb to the right analog stick. I believe it was ZephonDakari who said that the constantly revised controls featured in these games can be annoyingly stubborn, and his words prove quite true here, since the changes I just mentioned can leave a somewhat sluggish mark upon the proceedings. While they may sound like nothing in the grand scheme of things, they can leave you open and completely vulnerable to attack if you're not careful. The soundtrack is undoubtedly a first for the Tenkaichi series because, for the first time ever, the background music is left completely intact from the Japanese release. The Japanese voice actors, on the other hand, are another story, since quite a few of the characters are now voiced by their corresponding portrayers in the recent Dragon Ball Kai series. To give a couple of examples, Hikaru Midorikawa, who provides the voice of Android 16, replaces the deceased Hirotaka Suzuki STN, while Tetsuo Inada steps into voicing Nappa, which is rather odd considering that Nappa's original VA, Shozo Izuka, had previously returned to work on the Wii game Revenge of King Piccolo. The English cast from Funimation Productions return in solid form as well, and one thing I've noticed about them is that they seem much more comfortable voicing the characters in other forms of media, no doubt due to the lack of restrainment that dubbing the show can bring. That said, I do find it pretty strange that the term Dan is still being used and abused, particularly since the actors produce other, slightly less tamer curse words from time to time.
You little punks! You're really pissing me off!
Graphically, this is easily the flat-out best-looking installment in the Tenkaichi series, with the graphics moving at a nice and steady frame rate even during cutscenes, with all the jerkiness and puppet-like movements I'd previously mentioned gone. On the whole, I'm quite happy to sit this with the Dragon Ball Z games produced by Dimps, because frankly, I immediately thought of those games the second I laid eyes on this. Unfortunately, even the graphics have a downside, and it's one that's been prevalent in the series from day one: the camera. Other than shifting it to either side of your character, you have absolutely zero control over it. You would think by now that the developers would have fixed this problem by at least including the option to customize the camera to allow you to manipulate it, or at least change it to the degree that you can save yourself the trouble of trying to see what's going on when the game suddenly suffers from an epileptic fit. Aside from the control scheme, one of the biggest complaints I can muster about Raging Blast is the manner in which you unlock unlockables. Although you can acquire D points or destruction points by completing battles and even by collecting the capsules that appear on the loading screen, the currency used to purchase unlockables comes in the form of stars that are acquired by replaying completed missions and accomplishing certain objectives. I'd like to recommend getting a pen and paper and listing these objectives, because if you're in the middle of a battle and forget them, you can't simply pause the game and check them out. Nope, nope, nope. You have to go all the way back to the battle select screen in order to do that. Dick move, Spike. Dick move. When all was said and done, my final thoughts on Raging Blast are a mixed bag. The gameplay can get amazingly fast and really nails the feeling that you're playing through an episode of the series, and it's nice to see that the game doesn't force you to play through the Raditz to Cell sagas yet again. Sadly, Raging Blast also suffers from many of the same problems as the other Tenkaichi games, which is a shame since I honestly can't think of any other fighting game series that has consistently carried the same issues across to all of its installments.
生きる瞬間見届けよこの瞳で傷ついたこの世を変えろそのためにこの時代生まれてここにいる世界中に光を地球上に緑を地層のことに誇りを過去の痛み胸に無臭で一人